Stillness is not weakness. It's one of the greatest forces in the universe. Subtle, quiet, but unstoppable. It is the ocean beneath the storm. It is the mountain unmoved by the wind. When people think of power, they often picture action, noise, movement, dominance. But true power rarely announces itself. It doesn't need to. It knows what it carries. That's the power of doing nothing. The kind of nothing that's charged with self-awareness, confidence, and silent authority. You see, in relationships, arguments, emotional exchanges, and especially when dealing with someone who's pulling away, disrespecting you, or testing your boundaries, your instinct may scream, do something, call him, text him, get his attention. But that instinct is rooted in fear, not power. It's driven by insecurity, not self-worth. And the moment you act from fear, you give your power away. You become reactive. You move out of alignment with who you truly are and begin dancing to someone else's rhythm. That's not strength. That's survival mode. But when you master the art of doing nothing, not out of laziness or indifference, but out of discipline and intention, you step into a higher version of yourself. You begin to operate from a space of control and emotional clarity. The one who can stay calm when everything around them is chaotic is the one with the true advantage. The person who doesn't flinch, doesn't chase, doesn't panic, forces the other party to look inward, to question, to feel the absence and wonder why. It bothers them so much. Doing nothing is not avoidance. It's awareness. It's a refusal to lower your frequency to match chaos. When you choose silence over argument, peace over panic, and presence over reaction, you are no longer reacting to the world. You're creating your own. It's easy to yell. It's easy to chase. It's easy to explain yourself, to try to be heard, to try to fix someone else's perception of you. But all of that is noise. That's not control. That's desperation dressed up as effort. You do not need to do anything to prove your worth to someone. You don't have to fight to be seen, to be heard, or to be chosen. You only need to stand still. And in that stillness, know the value of your presence. When you do nothing, you're not withdrawing from love. You are detaching from illusion. You're letting go of the belief that you need to control how someone sees you or how they respond to you. And that is one of the most liberating things a person can experience. Stillness makes you magnetic. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you start attracting. The world operates on energy. When your energy is scattered, checking your phone, waiting for a text, needing a response, you weaken your frequency. But when you settle into yourself, when you sit in your truth with a calm heart and steady breath, you radiate something unshakable. And people feel that. Whether they admit it or not, they notice it. Because it stands out. It's rare. It's powerful. There's a difference between silence that comes from weakness and silence that comes from wisdom. The first one is afraid. The second one knows. When you know who you are, when you know what you bring, you don't need to speak it, you embody it. And embodiment is louder than expression. The man who once took your effort for granted will feel your absence more than he ever felt your presence. But that only happens when you stop trying to be noticed, when you stop performing, when you stop chasing an outcome. Doing nothing is not about ignoring your feelings. It's about mastering them. It's not about pretending you're okay. It's about knowing you're strong enough to be okay even when things don't go the way you hoped. That emotional mastery doesn't show up in big, dramatic decisions. It shows up in the quiet moments. The moments where you could call, but you don't. The moments where you could react, but you breathe. The moments where you could explain yourself, but you choose peace instead. That's where transformation happens. You are not powerless because you're silent. You are not weak because you're still. That stillness is your declaration. I do not move unless I choose to. Not because I fear losing someone, not because I need to fill the silence, but because I am grounded in myself. When you truly understand your worth, doing nothing isn't passive. It's precise. It's the boldest move you can make because it says, I trust myself enough to let go. I value myself enough to walk away. I respect myself enough to wait, to watch, and to see what aligns with me, not what I have to chase to keep. And so when you feel that emotional pressure rise, when you're tempted to act, to force, to fix, step back. Sit with the feeling, let it burn, let it pass. Because if you can sit through the fire without jumping to extinguish it, you'll come out on the other side with something no one can take from you. Inner peace. And the kind of confidence that doesn't chase. Energy flows where attention goes. That principle governs every interaction you experience, whether you realize it or not, in the realm of relationships, in the silent battles of power, respect, and emotional control. This truth becomes the quiet architect of everything that unfolds. The more attention you give to something or someone, the more power you hand over. And when that energy is directed toward a person who's pulling away, ignoring you, or playing games, you're not just giving them your thoughts. You're handing over your peace. You're offering them the steering wheel to your emotional world. When you focus on someone who is not meeting you halfway, you begin to build your life around their absence instead of your presence. You start to shape your energy around their lack of communication, their silence, their indifference. And every time you check your phone, replay a conversation, wonder what you did wrong, you're sending energy their way. Whether they know it consciously or not, they feel it. People feel when you're chasing them with your thoughts. They may not know how to describe it, but the energy becomes imbalanced. You've leaned in too far, and now the weight of the connection rests entirely on you. And the other person, they back away. Why? Because they feel your need, not your strength. Neediness is loud. Energy doesn't lie. No matter how composed your words are, if your energy is saying, please validate me, please want me, please choose me, the imbalance is felt. And it repels. That's why doing nothing is powerful. That's why pulling your attention inward creates a ripple effect that shifts the dynamic. The moment you stop feeding the fire, the flame begins to die down. But more importantly, the moment you stop sending all your energy outward, you begin to reclaim your emotional space. When you take your attention off someone who isn't valuing you and you place that focus back on yourself, you do something extraordinary. You shift the power structure. You are no longer the one chasing validation. You are no longer orbiting someone else's mood, text, or decision. You become the center again. And when you become the center of your own life, everything starts to shift. Not because you said something clever. Not because you played a game. But because you took back your attention. And that attention is your power source. It's your fuel. People chase what they feel is slipping from their grip, but they ignore what is always available. The moment you pull your energy back, the person who took it for granted begins to feel the void. They feel something has changed. Your energy is no longer circling around them. Your attention is no longer validating them. And that silence begins to echo. You haven't said a word, yet the message is loud. Something about your stillness forces a reaction. Why? Because people are used to being fed energy. When it stops, it shocks their system. They were drinking from your well of attention, and now it's dry. Doing nothing is not a passive state. It's an active redirection of energy. You're no longer reacting to what someone did or didn't do. You're responding to your own need for peace. You're no longer chasing closure or clarity from them. You're finding it in your own reflection. And that internal shift causes external reactions. Suddenly, the one who ignored you becomes curious. Suddenly, the one who overlooked you starts to observe, because the absence of your attention creates a presence more powerful than any words could. The truth is, most people don't value what's handed to them constantly. They value what they have to reach for. And the moment you pull your energy back, not as a tactic, but as a transformation, you force the other person to step into the role you once held. They begin to watch, to wonder, to analyze, just like you did. Because now the energy has shifted. They are no longer the focus. They are on the outside looking in. You don't need to fight for attention. You need to understand the value of your own. Your attention is currency. Spend it wisely. Don't invest it in someone who treats it like it's guaranteed. Don't pour it into a space where it gets lost, disrespected, or unnoticed. The moment you realize how valuable your energy is, you stop handing it out freely. You stop reacting to every silence. You stop checking for signs and start creating them within yourself. And this is not about manipulation, it's about energy discipline. Just as you wouldn't spend money recklessly, you don't spend energy on people or situations that drain you. You learn to pause, to observe, to pull back, to let the natural course of things unfold without your interference. And that restraint speaks volumes. People hear it, they feel it, and often it's that energetic shift, that invisible pull that brings clarity, closure, and sometimes even reconnection. Because when your energy is no longer chasing, it becomes magnetic. What was once pushing now pulls. What was once leaning now stands upright. And the person who once felt comfortable in your light starts noticing the darkness you left behind. That's the power of energy. That's the result of doing nothing while everything quietly changes in your favor. There is an unmatched strength in restraint, a kind of strength that doesn't shout, doesn't seek, and doesn't beg for recognition. When you resist the urge to react emotionally, you step into a space that few people ever master, the space of powerfully controlled stillness. This is not suppression, it's refinement. It's what happens when you've grown tired of the cycles of over-explaining, over-texting, overthinking. It's the quiet realization that your peace is more valuable than temporary validation. And the only way to protect that peace is by mastering the art of non-reaction. When someone pulls away from you, treats you with indifference, or begins to test your worth with their silence or their inconsistencies, it stirs something inside of you. It stirs a desire to fix it, to reach out, to correct their perception of you. That urge is instinctive, it's emotional, and it is very, very human. but it is also what keeps you trapped in the same cycle again and again. Every time you respond from that space of emotional urgency, you reaffirm the belief that someone else has the power to shake your foundation. They don't. They never did. You just forgot how rooted you truly are. Resisting the urge to react doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean you aren't hurt, confused, or even angry. It means you no longer allow those emotions to dictate your behavior. You pause. You sit with the feeling. You acknowledge it. And then you let it pass without acting on it. That is maturity. That is evolution. That is the beginning of true self-respect. Because when you do react, when you text in frustration, when you lash out in confusion, when you chase answers from someone who isn't offering clarity, you abandon your own center. You leave yourself. And every time you leave yourself for someone else's attention, you lose another piece of your inner peace. It's like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it. You think your reaction will fix the problem when really it fuels it. It shows the other person that they can control your mood, your thoughts, your behavior just by being inconsistent. But when you don't react, when you choose silence over chaos, calm over confusion, something begins to shift. Not just in them, but in you. You begin to realize how much of your emotional energy was being spent in defense, in explanation, in chasing. And now you're conserving that energy. Now you're redirecting it, not toward them, but back toward yourself. And this redirection becomes a turning point, becomes a new pattern. One that no longer revolves around the approval or disapproval of someone else. There's a profound message in your stillness. Your non-reaction speaks in volumes that no emotional outburst ever could. It says, I no longer need to convince you of my worth. It says, I see what's happening, but I refuse to entertain it. It says, I choose myself. And people feel that. They feel when the emotional strings they once pulled are no longer attached to you. They sense that the power dynamic has changed. That you are no longer available in the way they once assumed. That shift creates awareness. Sometimes even regret. But more importantly, it creates space. Space for truth. Space for clarity. Space for real alignment to emerge. Because when you stop reacting, the other person is left with themselves, with their behavior, with their choices. And now, without your reaction to distract them, they begin to face the reality of what they've done or what they've lost. Your stillness becomes their mirror. But make no mistake, this is not about playing a game. This isn't a tactic. It's a transformation. You're not withholding your reaction to manipulate them. You're doing it to protect yourself. You're choosing not to engage because you know the cost of engaging with chaos. You know how expensive it is to explain yourself to someone who doesn't truly want to understand you. You've learned how exhausting it is to chase clarity from someone who benefits from your confusion. Yeah, done. You realize that clarity doesn't come from them, it comes from you. From your decision to stop bleeding energy into a situation that only drains you. From your decision to remain grounded when everything around you tempts you to lose your composure. This is where your power is reclaimed, not in confrontation, not in explanation, but in the bold decision to rise above it all. And this is the moment everything begins to change. Not because they finally understand you, but because you finally understand yourself. You understand that your peace is not up for negotiation. You understand that not every message deserves a reply. Not every provocation deserves your energy. Not every test is meant to be passed. Some are meant to be ignored completely, because your silence carries more truth than your words ever could. When you resist the urge to react, you tell the world something very important. I do not move unless I decide to. That is power. Quiet. Stillness is misunderstood. Most people think doing nothing is weakness. They think silence is surrender. They see withdrawal as losing. But the truth is far more powerful. When you choose stillness, when you stop reacting, when you no longer chase, explain, or beg, you are not losing. You are winning quietly. You are stepping out of the emotional chaos that others live in. You are reclaiming space, space for clarity, space for strength, space for power. In that space, you grow. You grow beyond the need for external validation. You grow beyond the compulsion to always fix what someone else broke. You grow beyond the habit of shrinking yourself to fit someone else's inconsistency. Growth does not always come with movement. In fact, some of the deepest growth happens in the pause. It happens when you stop doing what you've always done and allow life to show you something different. It happens when you choose not to chase someone who's pulling away, when you allow the silence to stretch instead of filling it with desperate attempts to be heard. That stillness becomes your strength. Because in that space, you stop revolving around someone else's behavior. You stop adjusting yourself to the shifting moods, disappearing acts, and mind games of someone who's not even sure if they want to stay or leave. You start anchoring yourself in your own center. This kind of growth isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's not even visible at first, but it's happening. Every time you resist the urge to send that message, to clarify that point, to beg for closure, you are healing. Every time you sit with the discomfort instead of running from it, you're growing. It's subtle, but it's transformational, because the energy you used to spend chasing someone is now being reinvested in your own peace. And that's when the shift begins. You begin to see things clearly. You begin to realize how much of your self-worth was being measured through someone else's responses. You begin to see that it wasn't love, it was attachment. It was addiction to validation. It was a fear of being alone masquerading as connection. And when you stop feeding that cycle, when you stop running after what you think you've lost, you realize you never lost anything that was meant for you. You were just caught in a loop designed to keep you distracted from yourself. Now the loop is broken. And in the stillness, the fog starts to clear. You start noticing your own energy again. You start paying attention to what feels peaceful versus what feels heavy. You begin to redefine what it means to feel wanted. You stop settling for attention that's inconsistent, affection that's manipulative, and love that comes with conditions. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy. You stop calling emotional chaos a soul connection. And you begin to demand more, not from others, but from yourself, from your life. You decide that you don't want to just be chosen, you want to be cherished. And if that doesn't come, you won't beg for it. You'll simply walk away and create it within yourself, because that is what stillness teaches you. That the peace you were chasing in someone else always lived inside you. That the attention you thought you needed was really a substitute for self-cognition. That the love you were dying to receive was a mirror reflecting the love you were afraid to give yourself. And now in the quiet, you begin to hear the truth. Your worth is not tied to who texts you back. Your value does not rise and fall with someone's interest. Your identity is not anchored in anyone else's presence. You are enough, whole, right now as you are. This realization doesn't hit all at once. It unfolds slowly, quietly in the background of your life. But one day you notice that you're no longer waiting for them to come back. You're no longer checking their stories, rereading old messages, hoping for a sign. One day you realize your days are no longer dictated by their silence. Your emotions no longer not because they changed, but because you did. You've outgrown the need for temporary affection. You've stopped settling for being almost loved. You've grown into someone who knows their value without having to be reminded. That's the quiet transformation that takes place when you do nothing. When you let go instead of holding on. When you choose yourself instead of chasing someone who doesn't choose you back. The space you once filled with anxiety, doubt, and constant analysis is now filled with presence, with truth, with peace. And that kind of growth, the kind that happens in stillness, is irreversible. It doesn't shout. It doesn't broadcast. But it changes everything. It rewrites your story from the inside out. There's a strange, quiet shift that happens when you stop chasing people. Not out of bitterness, not out of ego, but from a place of deep realization that you were never supposed to convince anyone of your value. That anyone who needed to be shown your worth wasn't really looking to see it in the first place. When you embrace that truth, something remarkable happens. The energy you once scattered outward begins to flow back toward you. But begin to reclaim every part of yourself that you gave away in the name of being chosen. It's not about being cold. It's not about revenge or playing games. It's about understanding how much you've compromised your emotional well-being for the sake of connection. It's about recognizing how often you've broken your own boundaries just to keep someone else comfortable. And it's about no longer participating in relationships that require you to beg for the bare minimum. That's where your real power begins. Not in controlling others, but in controlling your own presence. When you pull back and do nothing, you're not being passive. You're not giving up. You're standing up for yourself. You're saying, I'm not here to chase. I'm here to align. There's a world of difference between pursuit and alignment. Chasing is rooted in fear, fear of losing, fear of being forgotten, fear of not being good enough. Alignment, however, is rooted in peace. It's knowing that what's meant for you doesn't have to be chased. It will meet you where you are. And if it doesn't, it was never truly meant to stay. People feel it when you stop chasing them. They notice when your energy shifts, when the calls stop, when the texts stop, when the checking up stops. It disrupts the dynamic they had grown used to. It forces them to sit with the silence they once left you drowning in. And more often than not, they begin to wonder. Not because you're playing a game, but because your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did. It's in your silence that people start hearing the echoes of what they lost. But this isn't about them. It's about you. It's about what you gain when you stop trying to prove your worth. You gain time. You gain clarity. You gain energy that was once drained by anxiety and overthinking. You begin to see yourself more clearly. Not through the lens of someone else's recognition, but through the truth of your own becoming. You realize how much power you gave away every time you waited for a reply, tolerated disrespect, or begged for closure. And in that realization, you take your power back, slowly, surely, completely. The temptation to break your silence will come. There will be days when the ache of being misunderstood will whisper to you, telling you to reach out, to explain yourself, to ask for answers. But you've done that before. You've gone down that road and found nothing but emptiness. That path doesn't lead to healing. It leads to more waiting, more hoping, more compromising. And now you're walking a different road, one that leads inward, one that builds you instead of breaking you. This new path is quiet at first. It's unfamiliar. It feels like loss, but it's actually rebirth. You're not losing them, you're finding you. You're not being abandoned, you're being realigned. Every moment you spend in stillness is a moment you invest in self-respect. Every urge you resist is a victory, not over them, but over the version of you that once needed them to feel whole. That's the transformation. That's a silent evolution happening behind your calm eyes and closed lips. You start showing up differently, not louder, but stronger, not more available, but more selective. You don't offer yourself where you're not appreciated. You don't water gardens that refuse to grow. You no longer show up with explanations and apologies for your boundaries. Instead, you let your silence speak. You let your absence teach. You let your growth make the statement your words never could. And here's what's even more powerful. You don't even need them to notice. You don't need them to come back. You don't need an apology or recognition. Because by the time they realize what they lost, you've already outgrown the version of you that wanted them to realize it. You've already built a life that doesn't include chasing people who walked away from it. Now you become someone who doesn't need to do anything to be valued. Your energy is your message. Your calm is your protection. Your silence is your boundary. And in the space of doing nothing, everything begins to shift. Not just in them, but more importantly, in you. The power of feminine energy lies in its ability to receive, to attract, to magnetize, not to chase, not to prove, not to beg. And yet, many women have been conditioned to believe that they must constantly assert themselves to be chosen, to be validated, to be loved. But true feminine power doesn't reside in overextending yourself for someone else's approval. It lives in your ability to sit back, to be still, and to allow the right energy to come to you. That kind of strength is not loud, but it is magnetic. It doesn't scream for attention. It commands presence by simply existing in wholeness. When a woman shifts from chasing to receiving, everything begins to change. She stops running after a man's attention. She stops trying to decode his silence or his mixed signals. She stops waking up each day wondering if she's done enough to earn his affection. Instead, she anchors into herself. She realizes that her value isn't up for negotiation, and her presence is not a product to be marketed to the highest emotional bidder. Her power is not in doing more, it is in being. And in that being, she becomes undeniable. Men are not drawn to women who chase. They may entertain it, they may enjoy the attention for a time, but deep down, it does not create the pull that leads to commitment. The more a woman chases, the more the man pulls away. Because masculine energy thrives in pursuit, and when the roles are reversed, the dance collapses. But when she reclaims her natural energy, when she decides to be the one who receives rather than chases, he feels it. Not because she says anything, but because her energy no longer stretches toward him. It's no longer available for confusion. It no longer offers itself freely without reciprocation. She is still. And in that stillness, he begins to move. But this shift is not about manipulating him. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about a deep internal alignment where you finally understand your own worth. You understand that a man who is truly interested will pursue you. He will show up. He will make it known. He won't leave you questioning, wondering, waiting. And if he doesn't, you no longer make excuses for that. You don't take it personally. You don't bend over backwards trying to change it. You simply detach. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with peace. Because you know that the right energy flows. It does not force. This inner detachment is where your real glow comes from. It's not in your clothes or your makeup or your smile. It's in the way you hold your energy. It's in the way you don't chase after what walks away. It's in the way you remain centered, grounded, unbothered. That energy makes a man pause. It makes him reconsider. It makes him question why he ever thought he could play with your time. And while he's questioning, you're evolving. You're growing deeper into your own skin. You're nurturing your peace. You're building a life that is so rich in self-worth that anyone who steps into it must rise to meet your standard or leave quietly. Feminine energy doesn't chase, it invites. It says, if you want access to me, there's a door, but I won't hold it open forever. It doesn't wait around for someone to figure out your value. It doesn't sit in confusion. It doesn't tolerate breadcrumbs. It watches. It observes. It notices the inconsistency and responds with distance, not desperation. That energy is intoxicating, not just to men, but to yourself. Because once you've tasted that kind of peace, once you've felt that kind of sovereignty over your emotions, you won't go back. You won't shrink yourself just to fit into someone else's small view of love. And the moment a man senses that shift, the moment he realizes you're no longer operating from need, that you're no longer anxiously waiting for him to act right, something in him begins to stir. He either rises or he disappears. And both outcomes serve you. Because you've learned that the one who's meant for you will never require you to chase him. He'll recognize your value and move toward it. He'll pursue you, not because he feels pressured, but because he sees your light and doesn't want to lose it. And even if he doesn't, you've lost nothing. You've gained yourself. The power of doing nothing is not passive. It's deeply active. Internally, it's a radical shift in how you see yourself, in what you tolerate, in how you respond. It's choosing to trust your energy over your anxiety. It's trusting that what is meant for you will never confuse you. It will never come wrapped in mixed signals and half-hearted attempts. It will arrive clearly, confidently, consistently. And until that happens, you stay seated in your peace. Not waiting, not hoping, not wishing. Just being. Fully, radiantly,